Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 592. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Also here to wish Zach a happy belated birthday.
Thank you, Kyle.
You crossed over into the new decade, finally.
I did, yes.
So are you both 40 at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, James, you just spent like a week with us. How was this? Oh my God.
I know. I don't fully track when it happened. I just know that it was happening like within a 30-day period to both of you guys. So
In like a 12-day period.
12-day period.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair
James,
enough.
what was it like spending multiple days with Zach and I together?
It was fun. It was
Okay.
awesome. I mean,
Good.
I kind of wish it was longer. Like it felt like it flew by. We had this
For sure.
long list of things to do, and I feel like we barely did any of it, but it was fun.
It's because we chose to sleep.
Sure. Yeah. That tends to happen when you get to middle-aged. You tend to prioritize sleep over fun.
Sleeping becomes more important, unfortunately.
For sure. It was fun.
Yeah.
We did a Cinereelists outdoor activity. Actually, two of them. One of them was going to the drive-in, which was fun. But the other one was going down a river in tubes. And I don't think we've ever spent time as a threesome together outdoors for doing something like that. I think that was an interesting thing to do.
James, you and I have never spent time socially together outside this podcast.
That's true.
This is like our first time hanging out.
You hung out at my wedding.
That's true.
Barely knew James. That was like the second or third time that I met him.
Oh, that's on you.
Why is that on me?
You should have known me earlier, Kyle. What's wrong with you?
I met you on episode 5 of the Cinereelists Podcast.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Well, just not to flip it back on you, but what's it like to hang out with me, Kyle?
So the cabin's nice, and I'll never do it again.
All right, fair enough.
No, I mean, obviously we're friends because we can do that. We talk weekly in
Sure.
this forum, so it just felt like an extension of our budding friendship.
Nice.
Yes.
You got Zach almost spit took over the phrase budding friendship.
Yeah, it's I don't know. We'll just move on from that.
Well, I'm excited to be here with you guys and excited to run down the last 10 movies we saw and rank them in order of preference, as we are wont to do. But before we do that, I have a check-in.
What do you
It's
got,
a-
James?
It's a podcast-related check-in. It's actually a throwback to a previous episode. Back in episode 586, Kyle and I were on the podcast. Zach was off gallivanting in Canada, I think, at that point, or somewhere. I don't remember where you've been in the last 30 days, but it's all over the world. And so Kyle and I were discussing Spider-Man: Across the Spider-Verse. And
Yes.
over the course of the conversation, we were talking about all the different Spider-Man characters, and one of the main characters in that movie, at least towards the end, he becomes more of a main character, is Spider-Man 2099. And I had a revelation on the podcast that, like, I think I might have an issue 1 of Spider-Man 2099 in my collection. And then I started thinking about it, and I was thinking, I might have more than just one copy of Spider-Man 2099. I might have a couple, because there was like a little time period where like 14-year-old James in the early 90s saw comics as certainly a hobby, but also an investment. Like I was going to buy a house with these things someday. My kids were going to go to college on it. And if I was lucky, I could even retire. Like all of those things would be paid with, I don't know, $200-300 worth of comics that I bought over the course of a year. So at the time, when new #1 issues would come out, I'd buy like 3 or 4 of them. But for some reason, and I don't know why, instead of buying my normal 3 or 4 of them, I bought more than 3 or 4 of Spider-Man 2099 #1. I bought 10 of them.
Whoa.
And so I don't know why I just picked that one, but the truth of the matter is that I always assumed 14-year-old James was dead wrong about comic books being an investment because the vast, vast, vast majority of anything that I bought in multiples isn't even worth what I paid 30 years ago. Okay. Like some of them you can't even give away. They're like that worthless. But turns out that these Spider-Man 2099 #1s, if you get them professionally graded, can be worth up to roughly $205 each. Like the 30-day average for the last 30 days is $205 if it's a 9.8 on a 10 scale, which means practically flawless. Like human eyes can't tell, but for some reason these graders keep 0.2% to themselves. So,
and it's my understanding that a 9.8 and a 9.7 are vastly different in value.
Yes. So a 9.8 averages last 30 days 205, and a 9.6 is $108.
Right.
So like less than half, I guess that would be, or close to half, whatever. And so, you know, I paid $1.75 plus roughly $28 per issue to get them graded. So I'm roughly $18 in for the cover price 30 years ago, and $300 just to get them all professionally graded. Not knowing anything about submitting these things, I just took the leap. I submitted them. It's been a month now, and they're back.
Ooh.
Have you opened the box yet?
I have not opened the box.
Fantastic.
So I have no clue what these have been graded. They've sat in bags for 30 years untouched. So I'm assuming they're flawless and they should all be 9.8s. But again, I don't know what I'm doing. I just, put in my credit card and let it fly. So I thought it might be fun to open these up right now.
Absolutely.
And see what they landed at. Just a little bit of perspective. I don't know what I'm doing. So these all could be like 8s. I don't know. They're a 9.8 in my eyes, but I'm not a professional grader. So maybe there's something wrong with them. I have no clue. Maybe I've completely wasted my money here. We will see. So,
and just for the top of the spectrum, a 9.9, which I think is the best you can get. What do those sell for?
A 9.9, the only one that I can tell that has sold since 2021, because they rarely go on sale. There's only 8 9.9s out in the world. There's 0 10s of this issue out in the world. And so the one that sold in March of 2021 sold for $3,500.
Wow.
So if there's a 9.9 in here, I mean, it's celebration time. Podcast over, basically.
Well, you can retire.
I can retire.
If you're watching on YouTube, this is going to be the full experience because you're going to see him opening the box, pulling them out one by one.
So here
James, any chance you want to like
up
turn
this away from my neck?
Yeah.
Do you want to have like a
if you guys want to watch James accidentally kill himself on camera with a large kitchen knife?
It's the biggest knife you could have used for sure.
So watch James just slice through the top issue with that
James,
knife.
I hope that's the thumbnail is you with that knife.
I don't want to get this episode demonetized, so probably not. All right, I have it open. I'm going to put it down on the ground.
Demonetized. We don't make money from this.
We're making money on
you
these
can't
games?
show knives on YouTube.
But our channel is not monetized.
It's monetized.
Okay, well, that's not making money.
Are you collecting on us?
Okay. You guys ready for this?
Ready, yeah.
Issue number 1 is a 9.4.
Ooh.
That's not good.
Do you throw in the
That's not good.
That's not good.
Let's see what it says. It doesn't give any reason. All right.
they don't justify.
If they're all 9.4s, that's going to be a disappointment, right?
If they're all, really what I was hoping for was all 9.8s, because then I'd have like roughly $1,500, which is like a bathroom remodel. That's what I was going for. But this is not a good sign because they all looked exactly the same to me.
Right.
So supposedly there's grader notes online. I'm curious to know why one would get a 9.4, but we'll see if they're all 9.4s. Here we go. Number 2. Ooh. 9.2.
Ooh, it's getting worse.
This is not going well.
We are watching James slowly die on the
No,
inside.
it's fine.
Okay,
It's fine.
a 9.4 means a very well-preserved collectible with minor wear and small manufacturing or handling defects.
Right. Yep. All right. Number 3, 9.4.
9.4.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's not good. Not good. So if these are all 9.4s, the next thing I might have to do is like send it to somebody who can press them. Man, I got a harsh grader. 9.4.
9.4. Man, someone's having a bad. You didn't like slip a 20 in there when you
I
sent
didn't.
it to them?
I'm
Okay.
curious to know what's wrong with them because I saw nothing, but we'll see if I can get 1 over a 9.4. 9.4.
Ooh.
No,
I wonder what's wrong with them.
because you gotta go 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, and then 0.8. That's too big of a jump.
They go by 2s, so none of those, but
Oh, okay.
9.4.
Oh, so how do you get a 9.9?
Yeah, they say one by 2s.
Another 9. Yeah, like 9.2, 9.4, 9.6. There's no like
9.8.
numbers.
And then 9.9 is 0.2 away from 9.8.
right. Yeah, for some reason there's a 9.9, but not the other odd number.
Not a 10. Okay.
All right, here we go.
Oh, boy.
9.4.
9.4.
Now I want to know what that 9.2. What was wrong with that one? You couldn't
Yeah,
just
yeah,
get a
you should compare-
9.4?
You should compare those two.
All right, here we go. 9.4.
9.4.
9.4.
Ooh.
Are they going to give me at least one 9.6 at least?
Maybe they give you like a one on the low end, one on the high end.
9.4.
9.4. How many do we have
I-
left?
I did watch YouTube videos after I sent this out.
Yeah.
There's one left. We will see if one of them can buck the trend. Here we
This
go.
is a 10. Perfect 10.
It's another 9.4.
Oh, 9.4. Wait,
What is a
we need,
9.4
we need a
sell
womp
for?
womp sound effect now.
I don't know. I didn't even look that up because I didn't really think it was a possibility. But I'm guessing if a 9.6 averages 108, that this is like $60 or $50, somewhere in there would be my guess. But there are a lot of 9.8s out there, so I don't know. I don't know. So my
Well-
next move is I found a guy on YouTube who presses these. I'm going to send him a video of him and say, do you think if I got these pressed and cleaned, if they need that, could they be 9.8s? And then
you have to regrade
and then do
them
I invest another $300 to send him? I don't know.
on
So
one.
You're essentially going to get them dry cleaned?
I mean, yeah, essentially.
Okay.
There's still like $1,000 to be had if I was to send them in again. But
But you're already $300 in.
that's what I mean. Like with
Yeah.
another $300, I'd be at $600 spent.
Oh,
But there's
I
still
see.
like, if they can get up to 9.8s, $1,000 out there. So
Well, how much does the pressing cost?
that's a good question too,
Okay.
that I don't know the answer to.
You keep chasing this dream, James.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a bummer. But
Sorry, man.
I also heard things that were like never send multiple issues together. Because then if you get a grader that gets on a run, they just stop looking at them essentially. And they're just like, oh, they're all the same. I'll just give them all the same grade, which they almost did. They made one a 9.2. That's all right. It's all good.
You
You
should
guys ready
send
to jump
just
into this?
one back in. Just one.
Send one of these 9.4s in, but then you got to
Yeah.
pay shipping and all this other stuff.
Well, I mean, at some point, it's the principle and the investigation that matters. Who cares about the money anymore? Let's see how the sausage is made.
That's true. That's true. Any luck on an average for 9.2s or 9.4s?
I'm seeing like 69, 75, something like that.
Okay. So I could get my money back and then some.
Yeah.
On all 10. What I'd really like to do is pay 14-year-old James back and like add up all the issues that I bought doubles of and see if there's enough profit to pay him back. Because that would be nice. Then I wouldn't feel like I completely wasted my time when I was 14. But anyway, thank you guys for indulging me on that one. Before we jump into our list for this week, well, we need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Cinereelists. check us out there. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists, get extra after show audio, amongst other Cinerealist swag. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that. 5 stars only. Or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelist.com with a comment, a question, a list suggestion, any of those kinds of things we take via email. Anything else before we jump into this week's list?
Let's jump in.
Let's do it.
Top 10, top 10, and top 10, and last 10, and last 10, and a last 10, last 10, and top 10, top 10, and top 10, and top 10, and last 10, last 10, and last 10, and last 10, and top 10.
Kyle, why don't you tell us what a top 10 last 10 is?
I would love to. A top 10 last 10 is a list of 10 movies, range against each other from, well, I guess number 1 be our favorite to number 10 our least favorite. And the only thing that's in common with these 10 movies is the last 10 movies that we have watched.
That's true.
Yes.
That's what a top 10 last 10 is. Who wants to go first? I will.
I knew
James, please.
My number 10 is a movie from 2019 called The Tunnel. And this movie was not good, I would say. It's a Norwegian disaster film that I found on Netflix. I don't believe it's a Netflix movie. I think they licensed it or something like that. And I should have known not to watch it when they didn't have the original language. Like they only had English for some reason. And I almost, ejected because I don't like it when to watch English dubs. It bothers me. I'd much rather read subtitles and have mouths match the audio. But I went ahead with it because I really wanted to watch it for some undescribable reason. And it's about this car accident that happens in a really long tunnel somewhere in
Norway?
Yeah, somewhere in Norway. I thought there was a city because it's based on a true story. Anyway, a tanker blew up inside a tunnel and it trapped a bunch of people inside the tunnel. And it's about the rescue effort. But it was so ham-fisted, I would say, and just kind of melodramatic. And also the mouths not matching the words probably ruined it because the voice acting, I think played into those things. I think maybe with original audio, it might not have played quite as ridiculously elevated as far as the dialogue goes. And it just kind of ruined the whole experience for me. So maybe it's not fair to make it a 1.5 on Letterboxd, but that was my experience watching it, probably because of the dialogue. But also it just, I don't know. I'm into Norwegian disaster thrillers, and this just was not doing it for me at all. My number 10.
Sounds very skippable.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll go next. Is that cool, Zach?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, my number 10 is technically a rewatch, which I don't always put on these lists, but it's a movie that James challenged me to rewatch in the year 2023 as part of my movie resolutions. A movie that I did not like when I saw, a movie that I actually gave the 45-minute rule to when I saw. And because James challenged me to watch it again, I did. And it's still at number 10, and it is The Other Guys from 2010.
All right.
This movie's dumb. I got past the 45-minute mark, which, by the way, I remember maybe the first 25 minutes of this movie. So I don't even think I made it 45 minutes into it the first time around. And it's not funny. It's not interesting. It's not that the jokes aren't funny and there's bland. It's the jokes are just offensive. As in, the only joke they make throughout the entire movie is how these guys aren't manly enough and they're acting like women, and that style of joke. Like a Prius is a woman's car, but they use different words I'm not going to use on the podcast. It's things like that. So every single joke is just man up. And I'm like, guys, it's 2010. What are we doing here? There is a plot involving Steve Coogan and, I don't know, Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell are trying to stop him from doing something or another. It doesn't matter. This movie's stupid, and I'm never going to watch this again. And I actually took it down a half star from my original rating. More movie gave me less enjoyment.
So you rate movies when you only get 30 minutes into them?
Well, apparently, I thought I gave this
Wild.
This is a movie that I watch pre-Letterboxd. So when I was going through and like doing my Letterboxd ranking, it's like, yeah, it's probably like a 1.5 or something like that.
So you felt like you had seen it all, but then in rewatching it, you realized you maybe hadn't.
Oh, no, I knew I had not seen the whole thing, but I knew that I also consciously dipped out of it. So I'm like, well, I'm going to give it a star rating because I've seen enough. And yeah, I'd seen enough back then, and I definitely have seen more than enough now.
Gotcha.
I like The Other Guys. I think it's funny.
Do you hate women?
Yes.
No. Yes, okay. Well, that's my number 10. That's all I have to say about that.
Amazing. Well, my number 10 is also a comedy from the late 2000s that I never saw and that I caught up on. It is Pineapple Express.
What? Number 10?
Number 10.
Similar movies.
Like a 3.5 star, right? You really stacked list, don't you?
This movie that was not. I did not find this movie funny. I think the ship had sailed at that point, probably, and it was probably not made for me in the first place. But yeah, I found it to be pretty tedious, actually.
That's the movie that introduced me to Danny McBride.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew about him until Tropic Thunder.
It's because you never watched Pineapple Express and the ship has sailed, like you said.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Well, the funny thing is, it's directed by David Gordon Green, who is a director I really like for his like indie films.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one just has zero of his stamp on it whatsoever.
Well, I mean, you can see it. You can see Tropic Thunder. Sorry, you can see Pineapple Express, like that version of David Gordon Green, like comes after Pineapple Express. Like he switched things up, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bummer. I mean, those are two movies that that I find very funny.
Well, maybe you need to re-examine your taste in movies, James.
You're not the first person to say that.
I do have a theory that comedies age so poorly that if you don't see them when they come out and have the nostalgia attached, like you lock in how much you enjoy it when you see it, right? In the area that you see it. And if you go back to an old comedy that you hadn't seen, it's very rare that it aged well if you don't have that concurrent time period.
Sure.
There's
I also like
exceptions,
Seth
but
Rogen a lot. And so I know other people have gotten tired of him and stuff like that. And for some reason, never burned out on him. So that doesn't explain The Other Guys, but I feel like they're similar movies. Anyway, my number 9 is also a comedy in theory. A movie I gave 2 stars, probably the harshest grade I've ever given to a Wes Anderson movie. I saw Asteroid City.
Whoa.
And absolutely did not enjoy it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the only reason it's at a 2 is because I respect it visually, but don't have anything real good to say about it beyond that. Like I liked the look of the movie. Certainly it's Wes Anderson doing his Dollhouse style and like to a T basically. And I enjoy that look and feel, but man, his characters in this movie were just so impenetrable to me. They did not get through on any emotional level, on any comedic level. I was just like, it's like when in some of his best movies, you'll have these characters that are really dry and kind of humorless, but then they're surrounded by interesting characters. And some of the comedy is in like how they react to each other, right? How the more vibrant character reacts to the dry one, how the dry one reacts to the vibrant one. In this movie, everybody is dry. They're all emotionless. And they're talking about some pretty heady subjects at times, and it's all just treated so plainly and boringly. And again, I liked the look of the movie, but that can only take you so far. If there's literally nobody I can attach myself to and everybody is being as annoyingly dry as possible, then it's just going to take me a while. Maybe someday I'll rewatch this Knowing what it is now, I'll have a different opinion on it. But as it stands right now, easily my least favorite Wes Anderson movie. And I've seen all of them.
All right. I still want to see this movie, but knowing that you did not care for it will not change my desire to see it.
Okay.
But
I'm curious to know when you guys see it, like
yeah,
what you think of it too.
He's a little on the rocks for me. So this could be a make or break Wes Anderson movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My number 9 is a 2023 movie called 65. This movie stars Adam Driver and Ariana Greenblatt. Adam Driver is an alien in the past who is on a cargo transport ship, and it crash lands on a mysterious planet, which it happens to be, dun dun dun, Earth, 65 million years ago. And he must fight dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what the movie wants you to think it's about. But actually, it's more about him trying to rescue a girl that's a surrogate for his, spoiler alert, dead daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of boring.
Okay.
When it's delivering, the dinosaurs are fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to watch Adam Driver with, like, I guess it's futuristic, but it's also in the past, whatever you want to call it. Futuristic weapons, fighting dinosaurs. But the movie spends so little time with the dinosaurs. So much of it is him and this girl trying to make their way to their escape ship. And I guess I wasn't really in the mood for a family drama when I was wanting to watch Adam Driver fighting dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
The other odd thing, and this is probably just because of the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World effect, they chose non-traditional dinosaurs for him to fight, because we've seen Velociraptors and T-Rex and all those other, we see the popular ones. I'm sure the filmmakers are like, well, we got to do something different. So the dinosaurs they chose, I do not know if they're real dinosaurs or not. They looked not like real dinosaurs, but they could just be maybe more period specific, but they're more lizard monster creatures than they were dinosaurs. So that took me out of it too. I just really wanted to see a T-Rex chasing him around.
It makes no sense to me to make a movie that takes place on Earth during the time of the dinosaurs and have monsters and not dinosaurs. That makes zero sense.
They could have been actual dinosaurs, but they were not your run-of-the-mill, well-known dinosaurs.
I mean, the dinosaurs, right? The dinosaurs look a certain way.
I know, like the Big 15. But I mean, there's a ton of dinosaurs out there. There is one good thing about this movie, and that is I watched it on the plane ride from Milwaukee to Georgia, and I started the movie as we were taking off, and the movie ended as we were landing. So that was a perfect runtime for a plane ride.
Nice and short.
Nice and short. Yep.
It's not the kind of movie you have to pay a whole lot of attention to as well.
No, the captain could interrupt. The flight attendants could interrupt. I was not missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. They didn't use real dinosaurs.
Okay. I didn't think so.
Yeah. There's 700 species of real dinosaurs, and they made up animals from the wrong.
They made up monsters.
And they don't have feathers.
No, it really just, the movie was a big swing and a miss.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Still want to see it. Just in case you're wrong, because the premise sounds so awesome.
There's going to be a theme of my list. It's a lot of awesome premises with mediocre execution.
Okay. Well, my number 9 is a sci-fi comedy from 1985 called My Science Project. Have either of you seen this film?
I have not.
No.
Okay. So some high school friends. This is like a high school buddy, kind of like a Weird Science type movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
two high school.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? Two high school friends find an abandoned alien object in a junkyard, and he uses it as his science fair project. And things go awry when the device melds the past, present, and future together. It's like a time travel kind of sync device.
Mm-hmm.
And it has Dennis Hopper as like a hippie teacher. And Fisher Stevens as one of the students.
Sure.
And it's terrible. in like a really schlocky way. In a fun way, I would say. Like it's terribly, terribly schlocky, but it's fun. And definitely not worth watching. It's such a product of its time that did not stand the test of time. But I imagine there's people with very fond memories of this movie. It's the kind of movie, if you saw it when you're 9, you think it's the coolest thing ever, and you kind of never let that go. But it's pretty rough.
What is this rated?
It's PG.
Okay. So it's a kid's movie.
Yeah, it's a teenager's movie.
Sure. But like, what was the other one you compared it to?
I mean, this is PG. No, this is 1985. So this is PG, like when it's kind of fuzzy what PG can mean. A lot of the jokes are pretty inappropriate.
Okay. This has an 11% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Does that sound about right?
It looks like a weird science knockoff.
Yeah.
I gave it a 1.5.
All right. My number 8, The Siege of J.Ville. From 2016. This movie is owned by Netflix. It just kind of like rolled from one movie into this one, and then I was like, all right, I'll watch this. And it's an action war film about these Irish soldiers who, in the 60s, were doing work for the UN. And they had to go to the Congo and like defend this position from insurgents or whatever. When they get there, they find out it's not really insurgents. It's like mercenaries, basically, that have been hired by the government to like drive the UN out, essentially. So, like the Irish, typically not a country that participates in a lot of wars. And so this was like kind of the first time first in modern times, they like took casualties and stuff like that. And so it's all about kind of a last stand, and it was fine, but there was not a whole like with war movies, you got to have two things. You got to have interesting action sequences, right? And you also have to make me care about any of the specific characters that are in the movie. Like, it's going to take a lot for me to care about the overarching plot or something like that. But if you can get me to feel like somebody's in danger that I actually care about, then maybe you've got a successful movie here. And they didn't have interesting action sequences, nor did they make me care about any of the characters. And so, there's nothing wrong with it, but I was just like, okay, next.
Nice. I like how we all have movies that like we're not excited about at all.
Oh, my list has only 2 movies that I scored 4 stars or above.
Okay.
Everything else is 3.5 or below. So yeah,
Nice.
it's definitely a weaker
Mixed bag.
list.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, my number 8 is a movie called Wild Things from 1998.
What?
Let me give you a little context
Criminally
for why I
low.
watched this movie. All right. So number 1, this movie was kind of infamous when I was in middle and high school.
For what?
For 2 reasons. One is that there is a kissing scene between Neve Campbell and Denise Richards.
Mm-hmm.
And also because there is a sex scene between Neve Campbell, Denise Richards, and Matt Dillon. And that's pretty much all I knew about this movie. If you had asked me, a couple weeks ago, what's Wild Things about? Also, Karina Longworth, you must remember this podcast host, is doing a whole series called Erotic 90s, where she's talking about the progression of how sex was portrayed in films in the 90s. And she keeps previewing that Wild Things is coming up. So I figured, well, this is a good time for me to watch this movie before listening to that podcast episode. So I got it from the library and I started watching it. And I quickly learned that in this movie, Neve Campbell and Denise Richards play high school students, and Matt Dillon is their teacher. which already I'm like, oh, already uncomfortable with this setup. The basic plot of it is both Neve Campbell and Denise Richards accuse Matt Dillon of raping them. And a trial is held and a verdict is reached. However, there is a detective played by Kevin Bacon who is dubious of the results of the trial. He thinks there's something hooey going on. And that's like the first half of the movie is just this setup. And then the last half of the movie, every scene is a new twist. Where a scene plays out and it's like, but this is what happened. And then the next scene plays out, but this is what happened. And it goes on for another like 45 minutes where every scene is just a new reveal that eventually make no sense whatsoever. Like if you tried to track back like who knew what and how deep they were in, it didn't work out at all. It even got to the point where the credits rolled and they were still revealing twists in scenes during the credits.
Really?
Yeah. So
did it ever twist back and forth? Like reverse twist?
No, like, I mean, there were double crosses, but there weren't necessarily, no, it was never like a twist and then a new twist and then the third twist reverted back to the first twist.
Okay.
Yeah, it just, every twist was a new element to the story. I mean, it's worth watching for the ridiculousness, for the campiness of it all, but I wouldn't say it's a good movie at all.
Okay, that's fair.
I imagine it's a product of the 90s.
Oh, I mean, for sure. It's definitely, yeah, like both the subject matter and the how sex is portrayed is definitely a late 90s thing. And I'm really interested to listen to the podcast about the movie, but the movie, yeah.
Okay. My number 8 is from 1992. It's Universal Soldier.
Oh, this JVDL?
Roland Emmerich.
JVDL?
Okay.
Yeah, Jean-Claude.
JCVD.
I was trying to figure out what initials you thought you were saying.
I was thinking out too. Yeah, John Van DeLorean.
Dwight Elijah 4.
And Dolph Lundgren.
And Dolph Lundgren. Okay.
Yeah. And this is like Roland Emmerich's Terminator, I would say. And
Sure.
it's so cheesy. It has not aged well. One of my movie goals for this year was to go through like the Blu-rays that I own that I haven't watched yet to see if I want to keep them or get rid of them. And so a lot of the movies on my list are that, you know, I have it on Blu-ray because I've always been curious about the film. I was curious about Universal Soldier, and it's just, man, it's so silly. And like, there's these super melodramatic elements to it about how they committed these atrocities in Vietnam, you know, and they have flashbacks to these things. And it's just, it hits all the wrong notes most of the time. And I don't know. I'm sure people love Universal Soldier, but I thought it was pretty silly.
It's one of those movies that was like on HBO on repeat for like years. And so I think people who love it like rewatched it in sections over the course of like 5 years. And so, yeah, if you don't have that attachment to it, I don't know why it would be interesting at this point. I saw it once, didn't care about it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I feel about Jean-Claude Van Damme in general. Like all my friends were into like Kickboxer and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't care about this.
Sure.
It really feels like a lot of these movies are products of their time that we're just catching decades too late.
For sure. My number 7 is the first movie that's over a 2.5 for me, so slightly above average, and it is Surrounded. That's the name of the movie. This is a 2023 movie starring Letitia Wright, Jamie Bell, and Michael K. Williams, amongst others. It's a Western where Letitia Wright plays a female who was formerly a slave. She's just been freed, and now she's going to the land that the government gave her, right? Like the whole 10, what was it? 10
10 acres and a mule.
Yeah,
or something
10
like
acres.
that. 4,
Or was it 4 acres and a mule? I don't remember.
40 acres, right?
40 acres.
That's what it is.
Math. Okay, just
40
multiply
acres.
the two together. We'll get there.
Right. And so she has been given this land, and so now she's traveling across the West trying to get to the land and like start a new life essentially. And in the West, there's like a different politics around race than there is in the South. And so she's trying to navigate like just how careful she needs to be around white people, basically. And things happen in the movie. Western things that you can imagine. And I watched it because Letitia Wright in the main role is like something I've never seen before other than Black Panther 2, basically, if you consider her in the main role. And so I just wanted to see her in something different. On top of that, you guys know I like Westerns, and the concept sounded interesting. And I don't know, everything I said about the movie is in the movie. It's just played out so exactly what I described, basically. Like there was no interesting styles of the presentation. Nobody is putting in a performance that's unexpected in any kind of way, in any good way or bad way. It just kind of played out exactly as you would expect this on paper to play out. And that's why it's a slightly above average, but really just like, it kind of felt like a missed opportunity to really do something different here. And instead they just made like standard Western, and that's fine. But that's why it's kind of more towards the middle of my list. Surrounded.
Nice. All right. My number 7 is an animated movie that Galen checked out from the library. He really wanted to watch with me. And it is Ferdinand from 2017.
Okay.
This movie stars John Cena, Kate McKinnon, Anthony Anderson, Bobby Cannavale, Peyton Manning, Gina Rodriguez, W. Diggs. The list goes on. Because it's a kid's anime movie, so they got a bunch of big names to do the voices. In this movie, John Cena plays a bull in Spain, and he comes from a line of bulls used for bull fighting. But he just wants to be a peaceful bull. He doesn't want to be a bullfighting bull. And it's kind of your generic kids plot of animal wants to be one thing, but it's supposed to be another thing. And what are they going to do? And I feel like this movie is just made over and over again for kids, where the message is be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all there really is to it. It's just odd because it treats the bulls like, I find it weird to watch movies now where there are both human and animal characters, and the animal characters have the same amount of intelligence as humans. Like Lion King doesn't bother me because they're all just animals, right? So there's no baseline of what smart is. But, when I watch this movie and there's like a little girl and this bull and they're communicating with each other, I'm like, no, it's a bull. It's not that smart. So I guess that's, as an adult watching these kids movies, that suspension of disbelief is challenging for me. Also, there's definitely allusions to the fact that bulls go to the bullfight and don't come back, but doesn't really deal with that. So like kids could be like, well, where's that bull go? What's happening? And then the animation is just, it's fine. Like Megan came home halfway through watching this and I was like, hey honey, what year do you think this movie's from? She's like, I don't know, 2009. Like, no, you're 12 years off. Like, just from what we can see from animation, this is just sort of blah. So this whole movie was blah. It's 2.5 stars. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing great about it either. I'm sure there's many of these movies in my future.
Sure.
So
cool. Well, mine is an animated film as well. My number 7 from 1994. It's The Page Master.
Oh yeah.
Starring Macaulay Culkin and Christopher Lloyd. And basically, Macaulay Culkin plays a fearful kid who's kind of scared of everything. And he wanders into a library where Christopher Lloyd is the librarian. And this is a magical library where all the books come alive. And so they all have the personalities of their genre. So there's like the, action, adventure, pirate book. and the fantasy magical book, stuff like that. And then they take Macaulay Culkin on these animated adventures. He becomes animated too. And then everything goes back into the real world. So it's a mix of like filmed stuff and animated stuff. And it's, again, a movie I had on Blu-ray that I was always curious about, and I watched it. And I would say in general, it's pretty boring. It's like a TV movie during the live action parts, and it's like a minor Don Bluth during the animation parts. But I would say the redeeming thing is I really like the script. Like the dialogue is really clever at times. Like the book's all talking like book puns constantly, but it's not annoying because they're actually like really clever, you know, instead of a book worried about dying and they're worried about getting shelved, you know, those kind of like puns, but it's near constant, everything they say. And I thought it was clever actually. But overall, the movie's pretty tedious and boring. So
that was
Page
Master.
Yeah.
That's one that I have heard of, have had opportunities to see, always passed, but I was curious about it too.
You probably missed the boat on it, James.
This movie is made for like 8-year-olds.
Right.
Sure. What's the one, like, I love The Never-Ending Story. Is there any parallel here or not really?
No, not at all. No,
Okay.
Zero. Never-Ending Story has like deep sadness and like pathos, you know, in it, and danger, real danger. And this one is like goofy action.
Okay.
Like this one's goofy.
Fair enough.
Macaulay
I think
Culkin
just the
doesn't watch
titles
Christopher
confused
Lloyd.
me.
Okay.
Yeah. The title is a great title.
Sure.
Yeah. But
interesting.
the story arc of Macaulay Culkin is at the beginning of the movie. He's afraid to, he rides around his bike with a helmet and like, you know, elbow pads, like a motorcycle helmet. And at the end of the movie, he takes all that off and he does a ramp jump with his bike on his way home.
Because he's no longer afraid.
Yeah.
Because he knows it's cool not to wear a helmet. What a nerd at the beginning.
I don't know. My number 6 is a movie called Showing Up from this year. This is a movie directed by Kelly Reichardt, director of Meek's Cutoff and the recent First Cow, which I know you guys enjoyed. This is a comedy drama starring Michelle Williams. It's set in the present day. She's an artist who works at an artist collective with a bunch of amateur artists that just kind of like come in and out of her life. And they're all kind of working on their own little art projects. None of them, like half of them are students and half of them are like starving artists essentially. And she is very socially awkward and can't really communicate with people very well. And that's pretty much the movie. I'm not really leaving a whole lot out, to be honest, because Kelly Reichardt makes some slow movies. That's kind of her thing. And sometimes it really works for me. And sometimes I finish it and I'm just kind of like, what did I just watch? Like literally nothing happened in this movie. And unfortunately, that's where Showing Up lands. I just kind of like when it ended, I was like, okay, I wasn't mad at the journey, but there's just no high point or low point to this. But I do feel like for an hour and a half, I lived the life of a socially awkward artist, you know, in this community. And there's a lot to respect in that, for sure. Michelle Williams was good in it as far as what's asked of her, which is just to be a normal person and, you know, not light up a room and not, you know what I mean? Just, I don't know. It was a weird one. I think maybe like my favorites from her are definitely Meek's Cutoff and First Cow, which are both like period piece movies that don't really have a lot going on with them either. But because it's not present day, I feel like I can attach myself to some of the mundanity of those movies. Whereas whenever they're in present day, I mean, I've seen 7 Kelly Reichardt movies, and pretty much all of her present day ones are the ones that I prefer less. And so maybe it's just that one element of it being a period piece and seeing like day in the life type story, but not in modern times, that puts it over the top for me with her. But yeah, Showing Up, if you're a Michelle Williams completionist or you like Kelly Reichardt, I think it's worth seeing. But if First Cow is the only thing you've seen from her, or maybe just Meek's Cutoff and First Cow, maybe try like Old Joy. And if you like Old Joy, then maybe Showing Up would work for you. I don't know. But if you've never seen a Kelly Reichardt movie, start with Meek's Cutoff or First Cow and work your way backwards for sure. So I enjoyed it, but ultimately, I don't know who I'd recommend this to. I have no clue. Only somebody who like already likes Kelly Reichardt movies would I start them here for sure.
Did you mention that Hong Chau's in this movie?
She's in it too.
Yeah.
And again, she's completely unremarkable, which is what this movie asks of her.
What about Andre 3000? Is he unremarkable?
Completely unremarkable.
That's
all
weird.
the characters
To cast
are
him
acting.
in-
They're just acting like normal people without
Like-
crazy drama in their life, just normal people drama.
I need some normal actors. Get me Andre 3000.
Sure.
Yeah.
It is interesting though, as I was watching the opening credits, they're running the normal things by, including like somebody who wrote the score. And then all of a sudden it says playing the flute, Andre 3000. And I was like, oh, there's going to be flute in this, and Andre 3000 is going to be playing it. And then I waited the whole movie, and then right at the end for like 30 seconds, there's a single flute that plays as a part of the soundtrack. It's not like he's on screen
it's on
playing a
screen.
flute. It's just a random flute playing as part of the score. I was like, okay, let's calm down here. No need for a before the film credit for this guy.
Notoriously hard to work with, Andre 3000.
Yes,
Yes.
he's a jerk.
All right. My number 6 is probably the second best titled movie in my top 10 last 10. And that is 2023's Cocaine Bear. This movie is a loosely based on a true story of in the 80s, a bunch of bags of cocaine being dropped from a airplane that was crashing, and a black bear unfortunately found those bags of cocaine, ingested them, and died. But this is the much funner version of that story, where instead the black bear that ingests said cocaine goes on a murdering rampage through the woods of Georgia, which, by the way, James, this movie takes place over in Chattahoochee Forest, which was like just east of where we were.
Okay.
I just thought that was pretty interesting. I was watching the movie last night. I was like, was I in Cocaine Bear territory recently?
I mean, if you accept the premise that a bear actually ate cocaine and reacted that way, yes, but
Right. Yes. So I mean, like, this movie knows what it is at times. It's a horror comedy where you're getting this drugged up bear who is murdering poor tourists and hikers and etc. Throughout the woods, while a cast of characters from a mom trying to find her daughter, played by Kerry Russell, to Ray Liotta in his last role playing the said drug kingpin trying to recover his stash, encounter this bear. And when it is that movie, this movie is pretty fun because it knows what it's doing. It knows it's a CG bear. It knows it's going to give you over the top gore and blood, and that's totally fine. When it's trying to tell like a human story, that's when the movie just really drags. And that's when you're getting Kerry Russell trying to rescue her daughter, or the son of Ray Liotta trying to convince Ray Liotta, drug kingpin, that it's not worth it in life. And again, it's, if you're going to give me, and this is a me thing, if you give me like a genre high concept movie of like Adam Driver fights dinosaurs or bears on cocaine, I don't want the human side of the story. I want give me that headline for 90 minutes.
I mean, if it was done well, you would have liked it. But
Probably,
they just don't do it
yes.
well. If
No.
you're not going to do it well, don't do it at all, is what you're saying.
Right. It was, that was the afterthought of like
Mhm.
getting humans to act.
Mhm.
Right.
I gave Cocaine Bear a 1.5.
Oh, you did not like
Letterboxd.
it.
I did not like it.
Okay.
I think I double featured it with something that was really good, and it was the second movie. And halfway through, I was like, I've never walked out on a movie before, but I might walk out on this.
Oh, so you saw this in a theater?
I saw it in a theater. Yeah.
And were there people in the theater?
There was like maybe 8 people in the theater.
Okay.
So there were,
I wonder-
but not a lot.
I wonder what this would have been like at like a packed crowd.
Probably more fun just because
Yeah.
people would yell and scream during the worst of it. But I don't know.
Get pretty bored during the worst of it.
Do you think Ray Liotta would have been in this if he knew it was the last movie that would come out of his?
I think so. I think his career wasn't cratering, but he was definitely on the downswing of his career. So I don't think he was getting super choosy with projects.
Oh, I just mean, do you think he wants that at the bottom of his
Oh,
filmography?
like if they're like, "Hey Ray, we got this movie for you called Cocaine Bear. FYI, it's the last movie you'll ever do."
Right.
Well, I think if a lot of us, if we had that choice of like, you're gonna die, do you want to do this last thing? We'd probably rethink those decisions. So I'm gonna say no. I think if Ray Liotta knew he was going to die, he would have chosen a different project.
We can hope.
Nice.
It all doesn't matter anyway, right, Zach? It's his nihilism. what does it matter when you die?
My number 6 is from 1984. I finally caught up with this Robert Zemeckis film, Romancing the Stone.
Yeah.
Romancing the Stone. Here's what I was hoping for. I was hoping for like 75% of a Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's what I was hoping for.
Mhm.
And instead, I think I got maybe like 20% of a Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
This starts Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, Danny DeVito, and it has its moments, I would say, but it is much less like iconic or special, and the plot is a lot less interesting than like you'd get from an Indiana Jones film. And in my head, they were always kind of like in the same category, just one was going to be better and the other one like minor. But this one's it's not in the same category, I would say. It's the same genre, but it lacks a lot of the charm of the indie movies, I would say. But I'm glad I watched it. I had an okay time with it. I gave it 3 stars. Romancing the Stone. There's a sequel, which I don't think I'm going to bother watching.
Jewel of the Nile. Is that the
Yeah.
sequel? Yeah.
I haven't
It's not
seen
supposed to be
either.
Very good.
I haven't seen either. But I've heard that Romancing the Stone is good if you like kind of adventure movies from the 80s, or was it
Yeah.
early 90s?
84.
84.
This was the movie that Zemeckis made before Back to the Future, and convinced, I don't know who the studio, Paramount maybe, convinced them that he could make Back to the Future. Like he had the idea for Back to the Future first. The studio didn't want to put money into it, so he made Romancing the Stone. He proved himself as a director, and then he made Back to the Future.
Yeah. You know what this movie is the most like is, what is that film with Sandy Bullock that came out a couple years ago?
Lost
where
City.
where she was a romance novelist. That is 100% the spiritual sequel to Romancing the Stone. Those are very, very tightly knit movies together.
Right, because in this one, Kathleen Turner is a romance novel writer
Yes.
who goes to South America and then essentially lives a romance novel down
Yes.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
But the only difference being that her model isn't the one that's coming to save her, right? Her cover model.
Right.
Right.
Instead, it was like a guy that resembled the kind of guy she wrote about.
Gotcha. My number 5, completely different movie than Romancing the Stone, for sure. 1993, The Age of Innocence. This is a Martin Scorsese film that I had never seen, set in the late 1800s. It's a historical romance drama, I guess, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, Winona Ryder, amongst others. believe Winona Ryder got nominated for an Oscar for this. And it got other nominations as well, as Scorsese films tend to do. I mean, it's very well crafted. You know what I mean? It's a Scorsese movie starring the people I just mentioned. And so it's not going to be awful. Is it my favorite Scorsese movie? Not by a long shot, just because he has like kind of a murderer's row of like what I would consider classics that I came to see in my lifetime type of thing. And so it was never going to supplant, Goodfellas and some of the other things that are considered more top tier Scorsese, at least for males in their 40s. And Age of Innocence is pretty much a straight romance movie set in the late 1800s. Everybody is firing on all the cylinders they need to. It's exactly what you think it is, and nothing more and nothing less. And so I respected it, but I never need to see this again. Just going to check it off my never seen Martin Scorsese list. The Age of Innocence.
This movie was a crossword clue on the A24 crossword I did last night.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the clue was?
Yes, it was means of conveyance in Age of Innocence.
Means of conveyance?
Right. And the answer was carriages.
Okay.
Carriages.
I don't
all I
like
know about this movie.
crosswords for the same reason I don't like BuzzFeed lists and stuff like that, or quizzes, BuzzFeed quizzes.
How are crosswords like BuzzFeed quizzes?
They just think they're so cute. They're more aggravating than cute to me.
I mean, so the easy crosswords, right, will say things like horse-drawn buggy. You're right, carriage. But then to get more challenging, they have to get cuter about it to make you think outside the box.
Right. And I understand that other people find that enjoyable, but I don't. I'm just like, dude, this is annoying.
Give it to me straight.
So you could have the most basic version, right? That would be just too easy for everyone, right? Where it gives you the closest possible clue to the thing that you need to write, and it's basically just take the time to fill it out, right?
Right.
So if they want to make it harder, they have two options, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could add one level of abstraction, which is like what Kyle's clue did, right? It one level removed from a basic description, but it's still like a basic description. It's just one level removed of abstraction. So you got to take an extra step, and it's the cuteness. The other is just more obscure trivia, right? That less and less people would know. So, what is the third longest bridge, So it's a very simple written clue. It's just you either know it or you don't. The problem is those would be no fun at all because you would only know, 10%, and the rest you have no chance of guessing,
Sure. Well, I mean, they could mix it with like easies and hards. That way, the other words that you are able to get will give you like context clues as far as where letters are to help you get there. Like if they want the third largest lake in the United States, if you got clues around it, you could probably guess what the third largest lake is, as long as you know the general names of big lakes.
Right.
Look,
I mean,
there's nothing wrong with what Kyle's book has done here. I'm just saying it annoys me personally. I don't do crossword puzzles, even the easy ones. So if that's what people enjoy, they should enjoy it. But I don't like those.
James, are you saying you don't care for wordplay?
Sure. I'm just saying, like, I'd rather play Sudoku or like Wordle because nobody's trying to be cute with that. You know what I mean? It's like something you can just figure out because
they're more
it's
straightforward.
figure-outable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What if Sudoku was like, this number appeared in Age of Innocence?
It's like some weird riddle for some reason just to get a number.
See, I would play that Sudoku. That sounds actually kind of fun. Like it's a puzzle you have to figure out in that sense.
Sure.
All right. My number 5 is the best titled movie on my list, and it is 2023's Plane.
Okay.
As in airplane. Not the plane, just plane.
Gerard Butler, right?
Gerard Butler. Yep. And this is the genre movie that I want, where it knows what it's doing. It says, we want to give people a plane crash with mercenaries and separatists, and there's none of this fluff in between about the human story. Just give me what I want.
All right.
And Plane did that. So in this movie, Gerard Butler plays a pilot for a low budget airline that, because of a poor decision on the airline's part, crashes on an island, I believe in the Philippines. And this island is run by, in case you miss it, they say it multiple times, militants and separatists. And Gerard Butler must defend his passengers from said militants and separatists. Thankfully for him, there is a convicted criminal also on board who, with a heart of gold, who's being transported and happens to have been in the French Foreign Legionnaire before that, Foreign Legion, played by Mike Coulter, who is a pretty cool character. So the two of them work together to defend and rescue these passengers from the militants and separatists. At the same time, you've got the airline, which realized they've screwed up, hiring illegal mercenaries to parachute in to also rescue them. And it's fun. The movie knows what it's doing. And it's way more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. I'm not saying it's a great movie. I only gave it 3 stars. But for what would be I think a January release Gerard Butler action movie, something that you don't have high expectations for, it definitely met and slightly exceeded my expectations for a winter action movie.
That one sounds fun.
Yeah, I would say it's one of the most fun ones on my list so far.
Okay. Cool. My number 5 is a movie we watched together in Georgia, and it's called Biosphere. It came out 2022. And this is a single location, 2-actor, small film. I don't know if I wouldn't consider it mumblecore, because
I think it's scripted.
Yeah, it's very scripted. It's maybe like heavily improv, I guess, like we need to get these beats out and let's, workshop it and then just shoot it. Starring Mark Duplass and Mel Eslin. And came out last year. It is 2 men that are in a survival bunker, and they're the last 2 men on Earth from what they can tell. And they're friends, and they just kind of like are living their life and dealing with hope and loss of hope. And, they change as people while they're in the biosphere and how that affects their relationship and stuff like that. It's a comedy. It's sci-fi. It's weird, and it gets weirder. It certainly has things to talk about, right? Like there's discussions to be had from where the movie goes. I would put this in the same kind of like universe as what was that movie where it's like it was like Somebody's Talking to Me or something that had Lakeith Stanfield.
Sorry to bother you.
Yeah. I'd say it's in that same kind of vibe as Sorry to Bother You.
Sure.
Of just like near reality kind of weirdness that brings up an interesting social concept, I would guess.
Okay.
I found this movie super engrossing. I was interested. I was involved in these characters. There was certainly some unbelievableness about some of the details, but that you just had to go along for the ride and see what they're going to do with it. I found this movie pretty interesting, worth watching. Definitely super weird, so I don't recommend it to anyone. But
you don't recommend it to
Biosphere.
anyone or just anyone?
Well, I'll let someone else recommend it to them.
Okay.
I don't want to be the guy that like, you recommended that to me. Why?
Yeah, you watch.
Why me?
Right, but like if I hadn't seen it, you would recommend it to me. You know me.
Of course you.
So you'd recommend it to somebody. People
Well,
you know. People you know
Yeah.
that could handle it.
Yeah.
Sure. I understand what you're saying, I think.
Biosphere, number 5.
My number 4? Is that what we're on? Yes.
Yeah.
My number 4 is from 2022. According to Wikipedia, it is the most watched non-English language title of all time on Netflix. It's a movie called Black Crab.
What?
It's a Norwegian action film starring Noomi Rapace. And it's set in the future. The future is like the whole world's at war. And she is she has been forced into being a soldier. And she just lives in a horrible war-torn existence. And supposedly like the whole world is like this, basically. They never really define like where the lines are. It's more like the governments of the world have just taken over everything. And all people are now military people, essentially. And so it's not really what the movie's about. It's more about like she was separated from her teenage daughter. She assumes her teenage daughter is out there somewhere. And she happened to formerly be a professional ice skater. And they have this very specific military mission where you need to get this MacGuffin from one part of this ginormous frozen body of water to another. And they have to do it in the middle of the night. And so they gather this elite team of people who know how to ice skate and they send them on this mission. And they tell her that her daughter is at the base that she's going to deliver this package to. And so the rest of the movie is them crossing the ice in the dead of night and action ensues, basically. And I generally enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the best movie I've ever seen, but we've talked about a lot of movies with high concepts to it. This one, sci-fi war movie that had its own kind of parameters of like, we're going to do this on the ice. We're going to do it at night. And we're going to have Noomi Rapace be our action star. She's a mother searching for her kid. And they executed on that high concept in an interesting but pretty dour way. Like nothing about this movie I would say is fun. Nobody here is having fun, including like while you watch it. It was just kind of like, this is a very harrowing situation and I want her to be successful. But man, they put her through the ringer for sure. Her and the rest of the soldiers with her. I wish there was a little more like political intrigue as far as like just giving you more of why all of this is happening, like why the war exists or like a bigger context. The movie definitely makes the decision to not give you any of that and just be like, she's a soldier. It's somewhat post-apocalyptic on some level, and she has to do this to get her daughter. It's like, okay, I need a little more context. They didn't give me that. So that's why it's probably not higher than it is on my list. But overall, I enjoyed it and would recommend it to people who like action movies and like Noomi Rapace and don't mind their action movies to like not have a light feel at all. Like this is not a Marvel movie where like it's action and they're making jokes. That is not this movie. It's a pretty dark movie, but beautifully shot. Like the scenes at night while they're skating and firing guns at each other, I was like, this is just a completely unique visual. And that's rare when I can just be like, oh, this Netflix movie from last year has a completely unique visual. Maybe never said that in my entire life. So, yeah, that was Black Crab. Also an awful title for this movie. Like they explain the title, but it's who cares? Like name it something enticing. Anyway.
I might add it to my watch list just to tune out for a while.
It is not in English, so hard to completely tune out, but you know.
Do I need to translate bullet sounds?
No.
Okay.
But there is some talking.
This doesn't sound like the type of movie you just kind of like casually have on. It sounds pretty dour.
It'll be. I don't think you can just watch. You might be able to watch some of it in the background, but it'll pull you away from whatever you're doing. I can pretty much guarantee you. Yeah.
All right, my number 4 is the previously mentioned Biosphere, the 2022, but probably came out 2023 movie. Zach, you did a pretty good job of summarizing this movie. I'm not going to get too much more into the plot. What I enjoy about this movie is the conversations and reactions between the two leads, Mark Duplass and Sterling K. Williams, as events unfolded throughout this movie. They're definitely put in some situations, and there's a cringe element to it, but they deliver that cringe and that humor so effortlessly that I was definitely enjoying this movie. I did have some issues with it. There's a lot of whys in this movie that don't really get explained or that they don't dive into. And I think we also, on the spot, came up with a better ending to this movie before the actual ending happened. So this movie has room for improvement, but I enjoyed it as a weird oddity of a film that I probably would not have seen if it had not been for being trapped in a cabin with you two for 4 days. Trapped is the wrong word. I chose to be there. It was a good time.
Wow. Cool. What'd you give it, Star-wise?
A 3.5.
Yeah,
this is my first 3.5 so far on my list.
Nice. Okay, my number 4 is another movie we watched at the cabin. I was the only one that watched it for the first time, Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
So this was my last Tarantino movie that I hadn't seen, and I had the Blu-ray, and I brought it, and we watched it, and it was really fun. I liked the toned down aspect of Tarantino in this. It was very much like a, some of his movies just kind of had this frenetic energy to it. He had too much caffeine, and all the characters had too much caffeine. This movie was not that. Everything was a little bit more relaxed, and you're just kind of hanging out with these people. It's basically like a caper film. Like I basically described it as Tarantino's Soderbergh film.
Yeah.
And I was into it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. And he plays a little bit with time, as he'll do sometimes. We'll see the same scene from different perspectives, but otherwise it was pretty straightforward. For some reason, I was not expecting Robert De Niro to pop up in this. And he was just kind of there for most of the movie. And, until the last act of the film, I was like, why is Robert De Niro in this at all? Like, it could literally be anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's Robert De Niro. And I found that really funny. So I enjoyed that he was in it, just kind of hanging out. It made sense that he was in there for the third act. I thought he was the right choice for that, but it was really funny. And then Samuel L. Jackson with hair that I've never seen before on him. So, and then Pam Grier obviously was awesome. So yeah, I liked this movie quite a bit. Glad I caught it.
That is one of my favorite Samuel L. Jackson performances. Like his character, his delivery, it's great.
Agreed. I like that movie a lot. I think it's kind of unique in that it feels like reserved Tarantino, right? Like even the moment in the parking lot, as shocking as it is, it's not like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood shocking. You know what I mean? It's like off screen type of thing. Yeah, I like it. And I like the caper element. I wish he would do more capers.
Did he do Kill Bill after Jackie Brown?
Yes.
Jackie Brown is his third movie.
Okay. And then Kill Bill is kind of where he amped up the violence and the
well, I would say he had a lot more shocking violence in his Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
I don't know if Reservoir Dogs has, well, it has the one ear scene, but you don't see anything. Like he
but it's prolonged.
Away.
It's so prolonged compared to Jackie Brown. It happens in seconds.
Right, but I'm saying like Kill Bill is going to show you the ear being cut off.
Sure.
Pre-Kill Bill, Tarantino's still reserved with how he's showing violence. There's still shocking violence. I mean, same for Pulp Fiction. Like all of them are violent movies, but it's a little bit more reserved. I feel like with Kill Bill, he's like, I'll just show everything. And then he kind of didn't go away from that.
I feel like Reservoir Dogs, despite the fact that the actual doing is off screen, is his most violent movie. Like from a perception, like me being affected by what's happening in the story.
Okay.
That's a hot
like
take, James.
Like what's worse?
I mean, I don't know, like the last 5 minutes of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
But that is so cartoonish and like in your face that it doesn't nearly affect me as much as like what's going on in Reservoir Dogs.
So you'd say maybe the most effective violence he's done was in Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, it's the most
Okay.
violent.
No,
Most
effective,
those are different-
whatever you
they're
want to say.
different
statements.
things. Yeah.
I don't know.
Like violence can be quantifiable. The effect
Yeah.
it had on you.
It's like
Sure.
the most effective essay and the longest essay.
I guess. Speaking of violence, my number 3, Casualties of War. It's a movie I've never seen from 1989. It's directed by Brian De Palma, and it stars Michael J. Fox and Sean Penn and John Leguizamo and John C. Reilly and Ving Rhames and a bunch of other people you might recognize from the late 80s, early 90s. This is a war movie set in Vietnam about these 5 soldiers who are pretty jaded, I would say, and they don't get something that they want, and to act out, or I don't know, they're just super jaded, and they, on their way to do a mission, kidnap a young girl and take her into the jungle and do things that soldiers shouldn't do with her. And the one soldier out of the 5 decides that he's not going to do this, and he doesn't like that the other guys are going to do it. And so he stands up to them, and they just kind of like ignore him, and he doesn't do anything about it. And so that's kind of the first half of the movie, which was hard to watch. And then the second half of the movie is like the fallout of that thing happening, and the other guys just kind of being like, this is not a big deal. It's war. Get over it. And he's like, no, I'm telling people about this. You're going to get in trouble for it. And like slowly moving his way up the chain of command and getting like not a lot of help from the chain of command. The chain of command is like, war is hell. Soldiers be soldiers type of stuff. And he just will not accept. Michael J. Fox, his character, will not accept that answer, and also feels tremendous guilt for not doing everything he possibly could to stop it, basically. And it's weird to watch Michael J. Fox in this role. I mean, it took me a while into the movie to kind of accept that, like, that's what this movie is. And Michael J. Fox is at the center of it. And I've just seen Back to the Future way too much, I guess, and Spin City and like all these other things where Michael J. Fox is kind of being his affable, likable self. And in this movie, he's the most likable of these guys, but also like didn't do anything to stop this absolutely horrendous thing. And so, yeah, it's hard to even like him, but of the total dislikable people, he's the least dislikable. And it's just that kind of movie. But it's very well acted. It gives you an interesting historical perspective on where maybe soldiers' minds would have been during the war. Certainly we heard about things like this happening after the fact, during the Vietnam War. And yeah, tough time in American history. I don't know if I can't imagine they would ever make this movie today, because it does not put, 1, the United States in a very good light, or 2, soldiers themselves in a very good light. And so like people are upset about Barbie. Barbie is nothing compared to what Casualties of War is. You know what I mean? As far as like red-pilled people would be up in arms that American soldiers were depicted in this way, whether it's true or not, type of thing. So yeah, I just don't think this would be made today. But it was very well made, but just know what you're getting into, because it's that movie.
This is one of the last Vietnam War movies that I have not seen.
Yeah, I didn't really know what it was about. I just hadn't heard much about it, and then there it was. So I watched it.
I've seen the cover, and the cover has always looked so dopey that I just never bothered.
Yeah.
Is it Sean Penn's expression and Michael J. Fox's helmet seeming too big for his head?
Yeah, there's a couple of posters out there, and they all just look strange.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly well acted and effective. But yeah, the subject matter is brutal.
It'd be fun to see an early John C. Reilly.
Yeah, except he's one of the 5. So this is not the John C. Reilly you like. Trust me.
I can only imagine. He's doing like Step Brothers in this movie.
He's kind of the dolt of the group. And so he goes along with it, certainly. And also, like, Sean Penn is kind of the mastermind scumbag, and he like just constantly craps on John C. Reilly because he's the goofball. And John Leguizamo plays the new guy who doesn't want to do it but does it anyway to be accepted, and then comes to regret. Anyway, it was good, but brutal.
All right.
Kyle, what do you got?
My number 3 is a French film from 1970 titled Le Cercle Rouge, which translates to The Red Circle, which I believe alludes to a Buddhist saying about the nature of man. This is a heist movie. It stars Alain Delon, who's the only person I recognized, who's best known for Le Samurai, and some other French actors. And in this movie, you have Alain Delon, who is just out of prison. He encounters a convict on the run, and they hatch together a plot to pull off a jewel heist. They need to recruit a sharpshooter for this jewel heist, as well as find a fence who can take care of these jewels. At the same time, there is a cop who is pursuing mostly the convict on the run, but is trying to kind of put all the pieces together about what's happening. And this movie kind of delivered everything I expected a French heist movie of this period to be. Like it's very cool. The costuming is cool. All the actors are very cool. The heist itself is done very well. It's shot in real time. It's all silent because you don't want to make noises during a heist. The cinematography is done really well. I liked everything about this movie except the pacing. This movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and it felt about 20 minutes too long. So much of the first half of the movie is just the setup of introducing each of these characters individually, and it takes about half an hour for them to all encounter each other, and then another 45 minutes for them to make the plot, and it just felt very slow to get to the actual heist. And once the heist happened, everything from there to the end was much faster paced and much more engaging. So again, it's a product of its time. Movies were made differently 50 years ago and in a different country, but I've seen other French heist movies like Rafifi, another one I saw recently, and I thought Rafifi was a much better movie overall, both pacing and just it did everything a little bit better than like the Cercle Rouge.
Le Cercle Rouge, that heist scene, I love that heist scene.
It's great.
It's so good. It's a procedural, right? You're watching the actual heist and all the little steps of it and the little tensions that come with that. It's awesome.
Right. And you don't know what the heist is beforehand. There's no planning scene. They just do it. And you're learning as they go, oh, that's why they have this guy. Oh, that's why this guy's here. Like they know the plot, but you don't know what the plot until you're there.
Yeah. I gave it a 3.5 too. The rest of the movie, I feel similarly to you, but the pacing, he's the spiritual father of the French New Wave, Jean-Pierre Melville. So like it certainly has like French New Wave elements to it, which I know that you don't get very excited about.
Well, for sure. Like I knew the movie I was watching, and I knew why I wasn't enjoying it. I mean, this is the same guy who also did Army of Darkness and Le Samurai, which are movies I enjoyed more than this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not a fault of the movie. It's more of a fault of what I like from movies.
Yeah. Interesting tidbit about Jean-Pierre Melville is he's not related to Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick.
Okay.
He just
It didn't cross my mind.
Oh, okay. I always thought that.
Okay.
Because like Renoir, is related to Renoir. I thought they were related for a long time, but he just took on the name because he loved that author. So he named himself after Herman Melville.
Do you know Moby is related to Herman Melville?
But is he?
Yeah, that's why he called himself Moby.
No.
The music artist?
Yes.
Is he really?
Is that true?
Look it up, and I hope I'm right, but that's what I've always heard. Like from his words. Like I can remember him talking about it, not just like someone saying.
Moby claims that Herman Melville is his great 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 uncle.
There we go.
Huh. Yeah, I've never stopped to consider why Moby calls himself Moby.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, because he claims he's related. It's interesting that it says Moby claims that, not that Moby's great 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 uncle is.
Mm-hmm.
If only we had genealogy.
So I really liked Rafiki. Are you saying I should not watch Le Cercle Rouge?
Rafifi?
I think it's worth watching.
Rafiki?
No, Rafiki is from
Rafifi.
Lion King.
Yeah.
Chiwetel Elijiofor.
Rafiki is Swahili.
Right. I liked Rafifi better, but I did not dislike Le Cercle Rouge.
Okay.
I just think that it's not the best French post-new wave heist movie that I've seen.
I already had it watch listed as well as Army of Shadows.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, not Army of Darkness, Army of Shadows. Army of Shadows, that is a good movie. That's a World War II Nazi revolutionary movie.
Cool.
My number
Zach.
3, you guys have talked about on the show, but I wasn't on that episode.
Okay.
So I didn't get to talk about it. And so now's my chance. It's called Blackberry from 2023.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
And I liked Blackberry a lot. I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. This is directed by Matt Johnson, who has only made 3 films. And I like them all. He's just a really exciting director in my mind. And Blackberry, it's seemingly on this wave of like, nostalgia films like Tetris and Air. But it's way better than those. It's more like akin to Social Network than it is to Tetris. It's a great kind of like period piece about the rise and fall of BlackBerry, with really good characters and a tight, story arc, and it's super watchable, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Nice. I like that movie too. I'm tempted to watch. They've had a TV show for a while called Nirvana, the band, the show, or something like that.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it yet. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like the comedy isn't necessarily what does it for me with these movies, and that feels like it's more of a straight comedy. But
well, his next film is going to be based on that.
Is going to be based on that show.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I have to catch up with it at some point. My number 2 is a recent movie from 2023. It's a comic book movie titled The Flash.
Number 2.
Which I enjoyed a lot.
Apparently.
It's really
Like The
it's kind of a shame that this movie came out when it did, because it's just so weighed down with so much stuff that's unrelated kind of to what they put on screen. Like it's weighed down by like the personal drama of its star and like just stuff he's done or is alleged to do that clouds the movie, I would say. There's a lot of bad CGI in this, but like no worse than most DCEU movies. But it's continuing a trend that like some people are turned off from these movies about, including myself. Like I wish they didn't have bad CGI, but they just do. When you walk in and watch the movies, you just assume that's what you're going to get, and that's what you get in The Flash. And then on top of that, you just have like the general collapse of the DCEU, right? They like made movies. They're like, we have a plan for these movies, and they started releasing them. And then like people were like, we don't like this plan. And then they were like, well, we don't know what we're going to do, but we'll just keep releasing them. And so they did that for a year or so. And then recently they pivoted with James Gunn and like all this other stuff. Some movies aren't canon anymore. They're just like, whatever their plan was, it's very nebulous now. If anybody is following a plan, it's more just like, this is the last gasp of what they already had in the pipeline. And it's kind of a shame because this movie I found really fun to watch. I don't know what Ezra Miller did or didn't do. All I know is how he is in this movie. He's perfectly fun to watch in this movie. It's like there's two versions of him. Hopefully this isn't a spoiler. I never saw a trailer, so I don't know. But there's like two versions of him, like one universe version.
The trailer shows that there's two, yeah.
Okay. There's two versions of him in this movie. And so a lot of the movie, two versions of him are on screen, and they're separate enough to be interesting on their own. And their interaction was frequently humorous to me. Not only that, like the whole movie is just filled with fan service for people who have kept up with these DC movies well beyond the DCEU series of films. And so as somebody who has done all that, I found bringing back old characters to be interesting and make sense in the context of the movie, and for the most part, be fun. Not dour like some of the Superman and Batman movies have been in the past, and not completely inconsequential like what's that movie, Shazam or whatever.
Shazam.
It just it hit the balance as well as any of these movies had. Unfortunately, it's got all this other stuff going on that I think probably weighs it down and made it completely fail at the box office. Like I'm convinced if they didn't have those three things, the personal drama of the main actor, the bad CGI reputation, deservedly, and the fact that nobody cares about the DCEU anymore, this would easily be people's favorite DCEU movie. And so it's kind of a shame because I had a lot of fun with it. And, if just one or two of those things were solved, I'd be down for like another Flash movie. Totally. If it's like in the same spirit of this one. But unfortunately, it is where it is. So
is Ezra Miller, is he like a good Flash? He just seems so dopey.
I don't really have a lot of context for how Flash should be. So to me, he was, even before the personal drama, the only legitimate source of humor in these things. And so I was already pre-interested in a Flash movie. You add on that like Andy Muschietti, I think is the director's name. He did the It movies.
Yeah.
And he did Mama, which is a good horror movie as well. So like it had a director that I was curious to see how he would do a superhero movie. This has no shades of horror in it. It is straight comic book fun. It doesn't necessarily do anything interesting with the multiple universes, but it also doesn't get bogged down in like in integrating that too much. I don't know. It just really worked for me. And yeah, I wish all the DCU movies worked as well as this one did on what they put on screen. And really, even the bad CGI, I was like, I knew it was going to have bad CGI. So when I was watching it, I didn't even have to note that it was bad CGI. I was just like, all right, I'm watching a half cartoon here. I'm okay with it. I wouldn't have played it if at this point you're not okay with it. Don't hit play because that's what's going to be there.
Cool.
So, my number 2.
It's not a tumor.
Oh, ow. I hit a
Didn't
weird
work.
algorithm on Twitter for a while of people just posting videos about how terrible the CGI in that movie was. And I don't even know why it was being shown to me, but just like every time I go on Twitter, it was like, oh my God, can't look at the Flash.
It's not even that it's a terrible. It just looks like a 3D animated movie in scenes.
Right.
It is what it is.
All right. My number 2 is another movie that I watched with you guys at the cabin. This is a 2022 movie that didn't come out until 2023, and it is Sisu.
This is my number 2 as well.
Excellent. All right. So Zach, we can bounce off each other on this one.
Yeah.
That's a bingo.
That is. Oh, and that's a character playing a Nazi saying that, which is perfect for this movie. Why, you may ask? Why is it perfect for this movie?
This is the
so
We're
this
waiting
is
for
the
you to explain
Nazi
it.
John Wick movie.
right. Yeah. This movie takes place during World War II. In Finland, there is this aging gold miner who is minding his own business. He encounters
Minding his own business.
mining. See what I did there? James doesn't care for wordplay though, so we're gonna move on.
I really don't.
He encounters a Nazi patrol that attacks him and steals his gold. And instead of moving on, he exacts violent revenge upon said group of Nazis through any means necessary. And again, the theme of this list seems to be I want genre movies that know what they're doing and give me what I want. And this is 90 minutes of this unkillable, unstoppable man killing Nazis in every creative way possible. It's definitely gets silly towards the end. It was stretching it a bit for me as we got to that third act. But I was kind of on board for this movie the whole way through, and it delivered what I wanted.
Yeah, the concept of his abilities is basically, what if you take a man that refuses to give up? So
Right.
no matter what, if he has a goal in mind, and let's say that goal is killing Nazis or taking gold to a bank or something like that, if he refuses to give up, you can't stop him. And he just refuses to give up. And it's so much fun to watch because it constantly surprises you. There's 15 surprises in this film because you're just not expecting it to go where it goes each time. It shows you something you haven't seen before, and it's really effective. It's really fun to watch. The crowd I watched it in was hooting and hollering, and that was just you two. So imagine seeing that in a theater.
There's definitely some Tarantino influences all over this movie, from the violence to even the chapters and the title cards.
Yeah.
I was surprised that Tarantino did not produce this movie.
Yeah, this was Tarantino's John Wick.
Correct. Yes. That was our number 2.
James, your number 1.
Oh, that's right. My number 1 was the previously mentioned The Biosphere.
All right.
Just
Uh,
Biosphere.
Is it
is
just
it the-
Biosphere?
Is it the Biosphere?
I believe
No,
it's just Biosphere.
It's just Biosphere. You're right. I mean, this movie I enjoyed a lot. I mean, what to say about it that you guys didn't already say? It's really good. It's a really small movie that has a pretty high concept twist, I guess, that they reveal to you fairly early. And then the rest of the movie is just like, okay, now that you've twisted us, how are you possibly going to explain your way out of this wet paper bag? Basically, because it's just it's a movie that goes places and then tries to bring you along for the ride, and I think it challenges certain preconceived notions, not only of what these types of end of the world films might be, but also like societal issues at the same time. And I I think that there's far more of these made than I see, but kind of these low budget two-hander dramas from like the Duplass brothers crowd. And I tend to only watch the ones that bubble up when people say they're good. And this one fell into that category. And so the last time that happened, it was a movie called The One I Love, which I've seen multiple times, and I still love that movie. And so I was hoping this one would fit that bill as well. I don't think it quite got there for sure. I think the ending has a lot more potential than what we ended up with, but the ride itself, considering it's nearly a no-budget movie that takes place in one place with only two actors, essentially talking the entire time, the fact that it kept me riveted in anticipation of what they were possibly going to do next, I think is an achievement, and I enjoyed it a lot. It'd probably be up there for like one of my favorite movies of the year. But there was a little left on the table with that ending, unfortunately.
Oh, I like the ending. I was fine with the ending.
The ending was good. It was kind of like you guys talk while you watch movies together.
Do we?
And it's fine. It didn't really bother me. But somebody threw out an ending before the ending actually played out. And I liked your version of the ending better than what we actually got. And like you came up with it in the moment. And it's hard for me to imagine that like if they hadn't just spent a little more time on this, if they couldn't have come to the same ending conclusion that you guys came to, or B, come up with something even better, given, another half hour of brain power put to this. I'm not quite sure. Like it would be different if I understood the reasoning behind the ending we got. I understand the reasoning. I don't understand why they didn't go a little farther with it. But
yeah, the ending is thematically appropriate to the movie and to things they've been discussing.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt like this movie was odd enough already.
Yeah.
They could have gone a little odder with the ending and brought it all together.
I mean, the things that you guys suggested that I'm not going to get into right now because it's spoiler is like literally like another 5 seconds added onto the movie. Like that's the difference between a 4 to me and a 4.5 for this movie. And so, yeah, it's a shame, but at the same time, I don't think that's a reason why people shouldn't watch it. It still has a somewhat satisfying ending. And the ending is not near as important as the ride. For sure. So my number 1, Biosphere.
Cool. All right, that's all 3 of our lists. Biosphere.
Yeah. Biosphere and Sisu didn't make my list because I already seen it, but I'm excited that those 2 movies that we got to watch up in Georgia during the Cinereelists retreat scored decently on our list.
Can we just now call it the annual Cinereelists retreat so that way we just have to do it next year?
I don't know if I'm quite there on annual.
Oh.
What's biannual? That means every other year, right?
Yes.
It could also mean twice a year.
All
no,
right.
there is a difference between one of them. It doesn't mean either or. Like biannual
Really?
either means, yeah, there is a word for the other one. I just don't know what it is.
Oh, because I thought bi-weekly could mean
Twice a week?
Bi-weekly is every other week.
Oh, it doesn't mean twice a week? I looked up biannual in the dictionary, and it says occurring twice a year.
Okay, look up bi-weekly.
Biannual is sometimes confused with biennial.
Oh, biannual. Annual. That's the difference.
Biennial.
Okay.
That means every other year?
Every
Every
other
other
year.
year.
So what about bi-weekly? Look that one up.
Bi-weekly, I think similarly, is twice a week.
Okay, what's every other week?
Every 2 weeks or twice a week.
So it's either, so bi-weekly is either
Yeah.
or.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's confusing. Because I don't know, if someone said, "Oh, you get paid bi-weekly," I'm like, "Sweet, you get 2 paychecks every week." All right, my number 1 is a 1972 movie called Sleuth. This is directed by Joseph Mankiewicz, who's famous for All About Eve and Cleopatra, Guys and Dolls. So he was more of like an earlier era of Hollywood, and this is actually the last movie that he made. This movie stars just 2 people, Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine. And it is a wonderful two-hander between these two great actors. One actor who is already an established great actor, Laurence Olivier, and then Michael Caine, who is at this point a up-and-coming actor. Still hasn't been. I mean, he's still good, but he's not Michael Caine yet.
Is this before Italian Job?
I have not seen Italian Job. This might be after Get Carter. I guess he's a known actor. He's not like a newcomer.
Yeah. But I think he's a very known actor.
But what I'm saying is like Michael Caine now has the cred that Laurence Olivier had when this movie is being made.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like you have a great upcoming actor against a incredible established actor. Okay. Anyway, so in this movie, Laurence Olivier plays an eccentric mystery novel author who invites Michael Caine to his house, and essentially reveals to Michael Caine, I know that you and my wife are having an affair. I'm okay with that. And we're going to pull off an insurance scam together so that way you can rob me and make off with money to keep her happy. And then I can make money off of the robbery. And that's sort of the setup for the movie. And it goes from there. And I really don't want to get more into the plot because half the fun of this movie is the plot. The other fun of this movie is just these two actors. They're great against each other. Laurence Olivier he plays this eccentric character. He's so full of bravado and drama in his performance. And then Michael Caine's he's kind of playing this straight man through the whole thing. But even he is holding his own against Laurence Olivier. This whole movie takes place in Laurence Olivier's house. This is based on a play. So it is, sort of a one location. But the house is full of these like animatronic automatons, these old wind-up toys that can draw pictures or react in certain ways. And throughout the movie, Joseph Mankiewicz keeps cutting to these animatronic devices as they're kind of like watching these two characters. Like the house is watching them the entire time. So even though it takes place in one location, it's visually very interesting. This movie is super hard to find though. Like I had to get a DVD copy from the library because apparently the rights to it were sold to a pharmaceutical company, which then shut down its like distribution wing. So the rights to this movie are in limbo. So good luck trying to find it. But if you do, you're gonna have a great time with it for sure.
Yeah, I really, really like this movie a lot.
I was expecting this to be a crime caper based on the title Sleuth, and the cover is Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine holding up spyglasses. And it is not the movie I was expecting whatsoever, but very happy with the movie I got.
Yeah. It's like two people like trading wits with each other.
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
Which is kind of my jam. Well, you can buy the DVD for $50 on eBay.
There you go. Like I said. Oh, I should have stolen from the library then.
Well, they'll charge you $50 then.
I know. Okay, so the quick library story. Galen was reading a book, like a comic book, Stranger Things, whatever, and from the library, and he spilt juice on it, and like he spilt a whole cup of juice on it. So like it's soaked every page of it. The pages were all kind of a little bent to them now. So I dried it out and we took it back to the library. I'm like, you know what? We're going to do the honest thing and we're going to tell them, oh, hey, we spilled juice on this. And then they'll be, oh, thanks for being honest. And so I brought it to them. I said, oh, we spilled juice on this. And like, okay, thanks for letting us know. That'll be $20 to replace it.
Yeah. Well, of course.
Which I
$20 to replace a comic book?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like a hardcover, like a graphic novel. Maybe graphic novel is a better word for it. Yes.
All right. Fair enough.
We've paid hundreds of dollars to the library system here.
In damages?
In damages, lost books, and late fees.
Oh,
I don't feel at all bad about it. We love our library. We've gotten so much use out of it, and I just consider my civic duty to pay them every now and then.
They got rid of late fees, so we no longer get charged late fees. Which
nice.
Late fees are a scam. Like
Yeah, but at a library, I mean, you got to give some incentive to bring it back.
No, it's because it's a library and you want other people to enjoy this also.
Right, but not everybody operates like that.
Well, the incentive to bring it back is after a while, if you don't bring it back, then they just charge you the replacement fee.
Oh, so they do charge you. They just don't give you a late fee.
Yeah, they don't charge you like $1 a week. Like you just say, oh, you haven't brought this back in 2 months? Okay, now it's considered lost and you owe us for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Zach, what's your number one?
Okay. My number one, another movie you guys have talked about, and I wasn't on the show, so I didn't get to weigh in. But I liked this movie quite a bit. It's 5 out of 5. Spider-Man: Across the Spider-Verse.
Nice.
This movie's awesome. It's so awesome. And it's kind of impressively awesome. I don't know how a group of people can make a creative work like this. You know, every now and then you're just like, how do people pull something like this off? Because it really hits on like so many levels. Like artistically, it is fresh. You know, and it is innovative and it's creative. Plot wise, I think it's interesting and engaging and like meaty. The acting is all amazing. You know, we get to know some characters a lot better, like the parents of Miles Morales, and they are just phenomenal, especially the mom. Just phenomenal. And yeah, this movie's just really good and funny. And there's like these little throwaway things constantly throughout the movie that are funny and clever. And yeah, it's really great. And I like the first one a ton. 5 out of 5 as well. And then to have the sequel come out, and I also like it. I don't know which one I like better. I'll have to think about that. But yeah, super glad that they're making these and that they're great. And I'm excited for the next one.
Nice.
Definitely these are the best Spider-Man anything that has been made.
Yeah, I think I've come to that conclusion as well. On some
even
level.
more so than Sam Raimi.
I don't know. I mean, those have the nostalgia attached to them, so maybe over time it'll overcome the Sam Raimi ones. But I feel like these are better constructed in their genre, probably, than the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I feel like they occupy separate parts of my brain because one's animated and one's not. But if I was to eliminate that and just be like best representation of Spider-Man or most interesting or most well put together as a whole, it might be these movies.
Zach, James and I went back and forth on which we prefer more, Into or Across, if we had to rank them against each other. So which one's higher for you, Into or Across?
I don't know. Probably this one. Probably
Really?
Across.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Why?
You know, part of it is I'm impressed that they were able to pull off a sequel that's as fun and creative. And I would say artistically a greater achievement.
Mhm.
Like it does some things with the action that I've never seen before ever. Like it's like they finally took the training wheels off of animation, you know. I don't know. And I felt like I got to know these characters a ton more. The sound design is awesome, you know, like that opening scene with her on the drums and like she's telling the story through playing the drums. It's just so many things are working. Kyle, I listened to your review and it just seemed like maybe you docked this one because it was a part 1. And I don't know if that's a good enough reason to dock it because part 2's coming and who cares?
So I gave it 5 out of 5.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But it wasn't much of a docking.
Yeah.
Right. But as far as like putting it number 2 instead of number 1 in your Spider-Man: Spider-Verse movies, it seemed like because it was part 1.
There's also, for me, maybe there's the novelty of the first one. Of just seeing that movie with no expectations, not knowing what I was going to get, and then just being completely blown away. With this movie, I think I had expectations. I was still impressed because, like you said, this movie was able to be an effective sequel to an already incredible movie. But I think for me, there's only be that novelness of that first one, which will keep it just above the second one.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, I'm an Empire Strikes Back guy, and this is an Empire Strikes Back kind of movie where it's like, it's everything that's great about the first, but it doesn't have any of the baggage of like having to bring you up to speed on these characters. It just goes right into like, now you're going to get to know them even more. And that worked for me more than the first one. But the first one's a 5 out of 5 as well. So
right, yeah. So
hard to say.
We've also gotten a fair amount of part 1s this year, and Across the Spider-Verse is by far the best part 1. Just in its form of, it told a complete story, even though it didn't complete the entire overarching story. I still feel like Across the Spider-Verse as a standalone movie is a complete story.
I mean, I feel like every thread is left loose. So I don't know if it completes the story. I mean, the main villain, then we introduce another villain. We don't know where these relationships are. Like, everything is open. I don't know if they closed any loop.
But okay, I would say it completes the story the same way that Empire Strikes Back completes the story. Or it tells a complete story arc. Maybe that's the word I'm going for.
The arc was the setup for the next movie.
Right.
And so it completes giving you a reason to care about the third movie. Whereas like Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, I don't feel did that unless you really like keys.
Yeah.
And you can't wait to see what happens with the key.
Or Fast X gave us a literal cut to black.
Right.
It just said like, to be continued. Like a terrible season closer to a movie or episode. Yeah.
I don't know what, like Mission Impossible, the second one, they've already filmed that, right?
No, they were filming it, and then because of the writers and now actors strike, it's on hold.
Okay. Because that movie's like not going to make its money back even close. And so, I mean, I know it's the power of Tom Cruise, and they're definitely going to have a second movie for sure. They're middle of filming it. They probably won't even scale it back. But man, if I was an executive, I would be worried about the next one.
I mean, he could cut a check if he needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll happen. But
it's going to happen. Sure.
It went from 1st to 4th, like in box office.
Right. Yeah. And Fast X 2 supposedly isn't going to make the top 10 box office this year.
Really?
Yeah. It also, if I was in the fast business, I'd be like, you think we could shave 50 million from this next one somehow? Is there any way?
I don't know, maybe 6 less characters. We could save us $50 million.
I sincerely hope that studios are paying attention to what Barbie and Oppenheimer are doing,
right,
and start giving us original stories instead of sequels and prequels and reboots.
Yeah, well, that would be nice.
Barbie and Oppenheimer, like this weekend, is the 4th best weekend ever, gross wise, and the other 3 weekends are either Star Wars or Marvel movies.
Right.
So like. Right. The fact that this is 2 original movies and is making a ton of money is great.
Yeah. It also has like the biggest split. So like if you look at the 3 that are above it, it's like one movie that was dominating the box office. This one has the largest percentage of shared profit across.
The other ones is like, it's a huge one and then a $15 million one, you know?
Right.
Yep. Speaking of Barbie and Oppenheimer, if all goes well, we're doing full Barbenheimer next week. We'll be discussing both of those movies. Thank you for joining us for this episode 592. Don't forget, find us on YouTube, subscribe there, support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. Maybe leave us a review, 5 stars only, or send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. You could also follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
X. It's X now.
I kind of refuse to call it that.
Is it really called X?
I'm just going to call it Twitter.
I've heard about that. I didn't know that. Yeah. I thought it was in the works. I didn't know if it was actually happening.
I think it just happened immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it won't stick, but
With Elon, nothing happens in a planned way. It just hits the front of his brain, and then he does it without.
I think
actually
like
thinking it through.
Meta's Facebook or whatever. I think they actually own the copyright to X when it comes to social media.
That's mine. Yes.
So
I've
who
heard.
knows?
It makes you wonder, like how does his car business even exist?
Because he
You know
bought
what I
it. Like he didn't
bought
build
an
Tesla.
existing company.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, is it because it's public that he doesn't just do whatever he wants to do with it? Because that's how he treats Twitter. Like, it's clear that, like, the only person making a decision here is him.
Yeah, I would say like SpaceX and Tesla has a board and has oversight. So he can't do anything he wants. Twitter, I don't know the overlying ownership of Twitter. Is Twitter still public or is it private now?
No, it's private. It's his. 100%.
Oh yeah, so it's Twitter. He can do whatever he wants with it, and yeah, I think that's the difference: is oversight versus not oversight.
Sure. I mean, I'm generally not very pro big business, but maybe in this case I am. He needs a board. He needs it to be public. He needs to be, what's the word? Responsible to somebody
babysat,
more than himself. Yeah.
held accountable.
Yeah. Or maybe he doesn't. He can just burn money like it's nothing. I read somewhere that he could have fed the world 1.5 times over with what he paid for Twitter.
Right.
Like all the people who are food insecure, he could have fed them 1.5 times over for a year or something.
Oh,
some weird statistic like that.
once you have $100 billion, there's zero difference to you between 100 billion and 1 billion. You know,
Sure.
Yeah.
like it doesn't change a single decision you can make, but it could do a ton of good for other people, or not if you just don't. You know, you could burn it if you want.
You could buy the social media site that's allowing the tracking of your airplane and then just burn it to the ground for some reason.
Yeah. You know what I just heard about him? He had this super rare McLaren, and he's with Peter Thiel, and he like slammed on the accelerator and then immediately spun out and crashed it.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I mean,
sounds
car's
like
falling-
something a 50-year-old man should definitely be doing. Insane. All right. On that note, we'll be back next week with hopefully Barbie and Oppenheimer, and we'll catch you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.